All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got Big H from Diggeth. Am I saying it correctly?
Diggeth.
Diggeth.
Oh yeah.
Diggeth.
Yeah.
Ah, okay, okay. It's like a play on words, like dig it. I dig it. Diggeth. You know, like a little bit before I hit record, I was talking about how much I love you guys. Again, the doom metal, stoner metal stuff is near and dear to my heart. And I want to dig in. I want to dig in. So I want to dig in with Diggeth. So talk to me. Let's go ahead and set a foundation. How did the band come about? Right? Extensive history. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Uh, well, actually, we started, or better said, I started it early 2000s. I think it was 2003, which is actually 20 crazy years ago. And I played in bands all my life. I started out when I was 14, 15. And me and a kid next door, who played guitar. We started our own first bands, when we were teenagers. And mainly in the 90s, I played in bands that were more a little bit more, like thrash metal, I would say. We were inspired by, the early Metallica, Exodus, Slayer records. I mean, I was, 15 in the mid 80s, so that music was big then.
Mhm.
And by the early 2000s, I really felt I wanted to do something different. I was a bit fed up with the fast riffing on the guitar, and there were so many bands doing that and, you know, doing that in the perfect way. And I really wanted, to do something more. I wanted to write songs. You know, I
Mhm.
I felt like I didn't want to be about all the technical guitar, but more writing songs and write stuff that I'm into. And a very important thing was, started singing myself. I was always, doing backup vocals in other bands where I played in.
Mhm.
And I really wanted, to try to do the lead vocals and, put more of myself into the music, more than you maybe can express with a guitar. And that early version of Diggeth, started out in 2003, and you just discussed the name. Uh, I actually I saw it. It's actually in the liner notes of one. I think it's the first Down album. It says
Oh.
something like there's a line, and in the end they say Diggeth, and I didn't know what it meant, but it sounded cool. And
Uh-huh.
then I found out it's the old King James Bible spelling, like how they put the verbs back then, like to diggeth a pit. It's literally in King James Bible. And
Nice.
I
Oh,
thought to
wow.
myself, wow, that's pretty heavy.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's how it came about. The name stuck, and musicians came and musicians went, and we found a stable lineup after a couple of years,
Mhm.
and started doing records. First in Holland, and then we got some fan base in Belgium, and a little bit in Germany, and a little bit in the UK, and
Mhm.
you know with the previous album Gringos Galacticos, things got a little bit more bigger. All of a sudden, we had a record deal in the United States, which
Okay.
was crazy. If you would have told the 15-year-old Harold that he's ever gonna, release albums in the States, I would have gone crazy probably.
And yeah. And I listened to your catalog, and like I said, like I said right before we started talking, man, is phenomenal stuff, man. And you know what? I really resonate with that, right? Because of sometimes the thrash stuff is too much after a while, right? Like we get it, you know what I mean? No, I mean, and like, you're talking to a hardcore Megadeth fan, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Those guys, we're not taking it away, but the thing that separates, those cats with the down, the corrosions of conformity is that soul, right? That bluesy, that feel.
Yeah.
Is that like a big influence on you guys as well as hearing your sound? Is that something for you guys?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, first and foremost, I was a big Megadeth fan when I was a kid. I remember
Mm.
that the first album, the Killing Is My Business album, came out.
Hmm.
And, you know, in 85, I was probably 13, something like that. And I had an older brother who was into Iron Maiden and Motorhead, you know, and then all of a sudden those way more faster bands came, you know, like the
Hmm.
early Metallica albums, Megadeth, and all that stuff. And that was amazing, you know, and I still love that stuff, you know. The first couple of Megadeth albums or Metallica albums, I think they're great and they're timeless, you know.
Of course, yeah.
But um, I also, I'm very much into the more blues-based type of bands, you know.
Yeah.
And nowadays I feel, you know, it's also maybe a thing of age, you know, like I feel I can express myself more in that format, you know, because it's bluesy. It you know, playing a shuffle, you know, if you know what a shuffle rhythm is, you know, you
Hmm.
don't hear that in thrash metal.
No.
Nobody plays a
No.
shuffle rhythm, you know, but
Yeah.
Black Sabbath did, you know,
Yes.
and the
The,
Allman Brothers did, you know, and all, and that's a great format, you know, to work with. But you know, I also, you know, still enjoy the early thrash albums. But for me, you know, expressing myself in this day and age, you know, that more blues type thing fits me way better.
yeah, yeah. No, it's and you could hear it, man. It's heavier, right? It's something deeper than, you know, when you have a riff in the tempo of maybe 80 to 120, maybe even 110,
Mm-hmm.
heavy, just heavy raw stuff, man. And then you're playing maybe, you know, 180 beats per minute, 200 beats per minute, you know. It's all good, but just something about a slower riff, right? A bluesy riff that, as you said, the shuffle, bringing up the greatest band of
Yeah,
all time, Black Sabbath, right? Black Sabbath wasn't blasting all the time, right?
yeah.
You know, so is Sabbath like a really big influence for you? And I know some of my listeners are going to be like, Matt, you need to shut up about Sabbath, but that's my band.
Well, I think every heavy band, you know, is somehow inspired by Black Sabbath. You know, I
Hmm.
mean, they like Tony Iommi. You know, he started it all. You know, I mean, what to say?
Hmm.
And I mean, he did great stuff over the years. You know, not only the stuff that he did with the original Black Sabbath with Ozzy, you know, but also the stuff that he did with Dio. You know, is phenomenal. You know, it's and that was surely that's a big influence. But there's also a lot more. You know, we just, you know, earlier we talked about Down. You know, the first Down record, second Down record. You know, it's amazing stuff.
Hmm.
But you
Hmm.
can hear also with them that it all originates back, you know, to early Black Sabbath. You know, a lot of the early late '60s, early '70s bands, and of course there were a lot more than Black Sabbath. I mean, my musical taste is pretty broad, you know.
Mm,
I
okay.
grew up with, like I said, with an older brother and an older nephew, and my older nephew, you know, I was a kid, and he played Uriah Heep, and he played Steve
Mm.
Miller Band and Electric Light Orchestra and Supertramp, all that stuff, you
Oh
know.
my goodness. The
And
progressive stuff.
yeah, yeah, that pretty progressive stuff, you know. And you know, that's that huge catalog of music that's all in here, you know. It's crazy how many songs you have in your head, you know.
Yeah.
That's mind-boggling. And I think with the music that we do nowadays, you know, I can tap into all those different styles and different songwriting, you know. And what you said about the slower tempos, I think it's true. um Gives you maybe a little bit more sense of melody and groove, you know,
Yeah.
especially the groove thing. But it's not, you know, that we do that too consciously, you know, that we have to write a slow song, you know.
Hmm.
For me, important is it has to groove. And I, you know, a good riff to me is as soon as I can put a vocal melody over it, you know, and I go like,
Ah.
yeah, this comes together, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or,
Hmm.
you know, structuring songs. And I always, you know, tell the other guys, you know, when I have a riff, you know, I'm looking for the little nephew of that riff, you know, or the cousin, you know, and that it sticks together somehow, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
And within thrash metal, you often hear the opposite. You know, they take riff A and riff B and make it melt together somehow. You know,
Yeah,
and that's also a form of art. You know, I'm not putting that down in any way.
of
Don't get
course,
me
of course.
wrong. That's just a completely different approach.
Yeah.
You know, and I happen to like both, but for myself, yeah, like I said, I'm yeah, you know, those early 70 bands, they were very important for this kind of music, I guess.
Yeah, 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 and I think that's one of the things I really love about you guys is that we're bringing it back, right? We're bringing it to this century, right? Because the 1970s, that's where the groove really was born. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
The groove heaviness. Yeah, I mean, Pantera came out, right? And down, as you said, down those guys
yeah,
bringing the heavy groove. But
yeah,
I think in the past couple decades, we've kind of lost the groove a little bit, which is not a bad thing. But we got bands like yourself who still live in the groove, right? And
yeah.
I love it, man. I really think it's phenomenal how even 50 years, right? 60 years, we have this amazing stuff that we can still groove. We can still
Exactly.
have, yeah, yeah,
And you know, like you just mentioned Pantera, you know, which is a great example because I think they had the perfect in between. You know, they
yeah.
tapped into the early stuff that maybe Metallica did, you know, and they also tapped into what Black Sabbath did, and they melded that in a way, you know, and you hear the influences of Maiden and Priest as well, you know. So um, yeah, that was
Yeah.
really great, you know, and I love that all. And um, you know, it's what you say is true, you know, after, you know, 60, let's say 60 years of heavy music, you know, there are still great new bands, you know, that do inspiring stuff. So that's really great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. And not only just that, but like that style specifically, right? That the because we have a lot of progressive stuff, right? We have this new the gent, the Meshuggah stuff, right? The new death metal that's coming. All of it is phenomenal. Not here to bash on anybody, but there's always room for the classics. You know what I mean? There's always
Yeah,
room for the foundation. And it's the meat and potato. You cannot go wrong, right? It's there's gonna be days where you're gonna want the death metal, the black metal, the thrash, all that stuff, but when you have the groove, it's the foundation of all of them, right? And I think that's where you guys lie. It's just
yeah.
right there.
You know, I think a good song is a good song. You know, it doesn't matter too much, you know, what kind of style of music it is. You know,
Yeah.
I think a good song, you know, can be played on an acoustic guitar or on a piano or whatever, you know, and it resonates. And yeah, that's my view on things. You know, like I always, you know, when I listen to other bands or other artists, you know, be it something nowadays or something from the past, I always listen to their way of songwriting. You know, how
Hmm.
did they structure the songs? How did they do stuff?
Yeah.
And that's very inspiring.
Yeah, man. Yeah, yeah. And one of the things I wanted to kind of transition to is not only talking about your guys' sound, but when I first heard you guys, I didn't read your bio yet. I was like, let me just check them out on Spotify. Let me see what's going on. I was like, wow, these guys are really heavy. And then when I found out you guys were a three-piece, that you guys were a power trio, I was
Yeah.
extremely blown away, super impressed, man. Is that by choice? Is that by design? Talk to me about that.
Pooh, good question. Um, you know, when we started this, you know, we really had the desire to keep things as simple as we could, you know. And like I said, in the 90s, I played in bands, you know, piece bands with lead singers and even you know, two guitars and even keyboards somewhere. And I really wanted to, you know, keep things really simple because if you well, let's go back to the topic of Black Sabbath. You know, they had a lead singer, but in basically they were a power trio as well. You know, it was
Technically, yeah,
one guitar, bass guitar, drums. You know,
yeah,
and the same goes, you know, for CC Top or even for Pantera.
yeah,
You know, they have a lead singer, but basically the three-piece band.
yeah, yeah,
And there's so much freedom when you have, you know, three-piece band, because that's what I like about a lot of the older bands, the 70s bands. You know, when you saw them live, they would go into an adventure. You know, it's not
hmm
playing that studio track. And in heavy metal, it's very common, to play that song exactly like you recorded it.
Yeah.
Fans even expect that. If you go to an Iron Maiden concert, the people are even singing the drum rolls. They know exactly what's coming.
Yeah.
And there's a beauty to that as well.
Yeah.
But what I liked about a lot of the early 70 bands, which were a lot of power trios, that they have this adventure in them. If you see old recordings of Led Zeppelin, it's never twice the same song. They change things around
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff happens, or all of a sudden they take it back and they move it forward again. And I guess that's what we wanted to do, and we felt, really, yeah, we had a lot of fun being a three-piece band, and let's see how heavy we can make it with just one guitar, and the
Yeah,
bass
yeah.
and the drums. And of course, in the studio you can do a lot more. And when you listen to the album, you hear an acoustic guitar, or you hear even a banjo in some songs. That's the little color, the little brushes of stuff that we incorporate in our music. But the heaviness, I like it really when we're playing together. We got a for the last 2 years a female bass player, Natasha,
I was
and
just gonna
she's
bring her
great.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, she plays. She's playing with the fingers and the
Beast.
bass,
Yeah.
and that gives so much of that. I don't know, that Geezer Butler kind of thing.
That's what I heard in your guys' tone, man. And I wanted, and sorry to interrupt, but I want to give her kudos, man. I want to.
Yeah,
It's
she's an
just
amazing
yeah.
player. Yeah. And she's really, fun to be around with. She's so much into music and picks it up all so easily. I can, I've got my own. We got our own studio environment at home. We built it a couple of years ago to be more independent. And record it the way, that we envision it, and take the time. Because that's most of the problems with bands. Like if you want to have a good recording, a good production, it takes time.
Yeah. Yes.
And
Yes.
when you go into a studio, it's very expensive to do it. So we build our own studio. And but my point is, when I'm in the control room, setting stuff up for recording, I can really enjoy when our drummer Casper and Natasha are playing together. They groove for 10 minutes, and you go like, wow, just the drums, just the bass.
Yeah.
They put down this massive foundation, where I on top I can do whatever I want.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey everybody, jumping in real quick just to let you know about today's sponsor, Metal and Iron. Are you a gym goer? Do you like listening to metal? Do you like lifting heavy? Well, Metal and Iron's got you covered with shirts and designs that are there to let people know that you're about the heavy lifestyle. None of this Gymshark shit, none of this Adidas, Nikes, nah, you're there to lift the heavy shit. So check it out. Use the code BEYONDHEAVY for 15% off and let them know Mayhem sent you.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of power behind it. That's a lot of power behind your creativity, because one thing is for sure, and maybe I want to hear your opinion. I think some three-piece bands are heavier than four-piece bands, to be honest with you, because they got that bass player and that guitar connection, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just heavy. You ever heard of a band called Russian Circles? You ever heard of them? Any? No?
No,
Check them out. Check 'em out. I'm gonna send you a
I
link.
will.
Instrumental band, three-piece, traditional, kind of stoner metal, progressive stuff. No vocals, no vocals.
Right.
One of the heaviest things I've ever heard in my life, right? Not even
Yeah.
just production wise, like that aside, just the intensity, the
Yeah.
rawness. I've never heard that in such a long time. So
Yeah.
you guys kind of remind me of that, where you guys have such a heavy tone, and that's coming from her.
Yeah.
That's her,
Yeah. It's like it's what you said. If you play together for a while, you get that gelling thing, and that can be done also with more instruments, with two guitars. If you know going to see Down Life, you're going to be crushed,
Yeah.
by the
Oh
two
yeah.
guitars. Yeah, doing that. Which there's beauty in that as well.
Yeah.
I like both.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like oh, I only prefer, you know, the three-piece band. No, that's not the case, you know. But I like the freedom that we have with just the three of us.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
that makes it easier, you're right? It makes it easier for you guys to focus on the creativity other than, hey, there's another person in the band. There's another person that we got to work with,
True.
deal with. Yeah, you know, another
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also sometimes it's challenging, you know, because, you know, when you record, you know, we listen our albums in stereo, you know, and we always record an extra guitar and stuff like that. And sometimes you know, every time when we start a new album cycle, you know, I go like, you know, the next album I'm recording just one guitar, you know, and keep it more old style, and we always
Yeah.
end up with with extra guitar overdubs.
Yeah.
So, but it's always a challenge, you know, when we always try to stick what we did on the demos. You know, I always go like, okay, the demo sounded heavy. That was just one guitar track, you know, and try to stick a little bit more to that. But it's always, the studio is a challenging thing, you know, because you're always gonna try stuff.
Yeah, and that's the place where to be creative, right? And especially since you guys have your own, hey, we don't got to worry to anybody. We
Yeah.
don't got, you know what I mean? One the reason why it caught me so heavy is the first song off your guys' new album, right? And I want to talk about that, is the 0 Hour in Doomtown. Okay, right? It's the title. And just right off the bat, I'm a sucker for intros, and the song Freak Flag, beautiful. One of the best intro songs I've heard in a very long time. You know, but what does this album mean to you? What do you think people should expect to it? Talk to us about that. Oh yeah, we're
That's a
going
good
beyond the heavy.
question. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, like you maybe know, there are two different versions of the album. Like the European version is a double album, and the USA version is a single album with some extra tracks you can download, and of course on Spotify all tracks are there. And the thing is, we wrote the majority of the album. I think that was early 2020, just before the pandemic hit. You know, because we were supposed to play shows in the United States in May 2020, and we all know what happened. So, you know, the whole pandemic came in March 2020, and, you know, everything was shut down for a long time, and we were not even planning already recording the next album. But we wrote a lot of songs, you know, between January and what was it, March 2020, and then the pandemic hit, and, you know, we said like, okay, you know, we have to wait it out and see what happens. You know, nobody knew.
Yeah.
And we just, you know, in the beginning we couldn't write together, you know, because you had all the regulations. You know, you couldn't see each other.
All that stuff.
Yeah, we had to talk through Zoom meetings and stuff like that, which was really, it's already feels like it's a very long time ago, which is not.
Yeah.
But
it was only yesterday.
Yeah, it was very strange, you know, it was so strange. And after a while, you know, we came back together, which I think was probably September or something like that, and we started, you know, listening back to what we did earlier that year, and we went like, okay, that sounds good, you know, and it all, you know, fits together, and we had a lot of ideas more. And, you know, then the lyrics came, and a lot of the lyrics, you know, I've been to, you know, quite a rough time over the last 5 years. You know, I mentioned earlier my my older brother, you know, which basically was my beacon in music when I was younger. He was 5 years ahead of me, and, you know, and he came in with all the bands, you know, like I said earlier, the Steve Miller Band, you know, and up to Iron Maiden, up to Metallica, Motorhead, and all that stuff. You know, he was always a little bit ahead of me. And my brother passed away 5 years ago, and that was really a difficult time, which it still is, of course. You know, because your other half is gone. You know, the one I always could relate to, and the album is, you know, some of the songs are about, you know, all kinds of grief, but also it's not in a negative way. You know, it's not a depressing album, I would say. It's
Oh
more,
no, no, no.
it's contemplating things, you know, and it's
Yeah.
also about, you know, like the first song you mentioned, Freak Flag, is, you know, is about, you know, taking your chances, you know,
Mm,
the opportunities you get in life.
hmm.
Don't ignore that, you know. Try to um, as brightly feathered as you can, you know, and keep your vision open.
Yeah.
And I mean, in this day and age, you know, you know, it's not a political song or anything like that, you
No,
know.
no,
But
no.
if I look, you know, what's going on in the world, and a lot of people that I know, it's everybody's very this at the moment, you know. It's especially when it comes to, you know, opinions. You're against something, or you're just, you know, or you're on the other opposite part of it,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
annoys me in a bit, you know, because I go like, you know, man, I find it hard to judge what, you know, if something is right or wrong. You know, it's
Hmm.
somewhere, it's
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
between. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, some
No.
stuff is of course very obvious right or wrong,
Yeah. Yeah.
but other stuff, you know, you have to give it some thoughts, you know, and try to see how other people regard stuff. You know, try
Yeah.
to look through their glasses, you know, and go like, okay, that's the way how they look at it, you know,
Mhm.
and try to have some kind of conversation about things. But that album is a lot about, you know, and enjoying life, you know, live by the day, you know, and taking your chances, and looking back is good, you know, and of course grieving is part of that,
Of
as
course.
well as celebrating, enjoying what you do. And there's this, I wouldn't say it's a concept album, but there's a lyrical connection through the whole album.
Gotcha. And is it safe to say it was more for you as a healing process, right? It was more of a healing album, I guess you would say, for you, as it
Yeah,
pertains to you, but also, you know, because I'm looking at some of the lyrics, right? Last man, or I'm sorry, songs, Last Man Standing, Lights Go Dim, right?
yeah,
Five Stages of Grief, right? You know, and we're seeing that part of the reflection, right? We're
right.
reflecting on life, and I was kind of gravitating to it, like as I was hearing
Yeah,
you sing, and I'm like, oh man, like this is it's deep. It's very deep. As much
yeah.
as the sound is heavy, so is the lyrical content. Yeah.
Well, actually, yeah, I think you're right about that, and that's what I like about the album. It's like the music, the vibe, the groove, and the lyrics. They come together
Yeah.
in a way that I don't think that we achieved it before. You know, it's like a statement. You know, like it fits together. You know, it's like, it has to be that. You know, I
Yeah.
can't think of another lyric that would have fitted, you know, a particular song. It had to be that way, I guess.
Yeah.
And you know, you mentioned "Lights Go Dim," you know, which the lyrics in that song. There's one part is basically the last conversation I had with my brother, you know,
Mm.
and I put that into to lyrics. And sometimes I you know I have to learn the songs again for the tour and stuff like that. So memorizing the lyrics,
Yeah.
and I go like, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, this is pretty deep, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's also lighter stuff on it that I like, you know, like I'm always very bad at my own song titles, but we also but you know, we also have songs about lighter subjects, you know,
Of
and
course. Of course.
you know, I'm way into the old spaghetti western movies, you know, the old Clint Eastwood movies, and we
Hmm.
try to put little things like that into the songs as well. You know, like
Yeah.
we did on the previous album. We have a song called Three Gringos, and
Yeah.
that song is basically about the last 10 minutes of the movie The Good, the Bad, and Ugly. You know, when they have
Yeah.
that Mexican standoff. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember I watched that movie with my dad. You know, when I was really young, and that blew me away. It
Hmm.
still does when you know, occasionally I see that movie again. I go like,
Hmm.
wow.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like it's still good, right? You feel the life force of the music coming in, man, and especially for this album, right? Because
yeah,
this is good stuff, man. This is amazing stuff, and it really, like, when I'm telling you, from the moment I press play, you took me to a universe, and I can't say that about a lot of bands. I can't, I've said that about Jimi Hendrix. I've said that about Marty Freeman, from Megadeth, from Sabbath, the greatest band of all time, and you guys did that, and I'm like,
Wow.
it gives me chills, so again,
Wow.
kudos to you guys, praise to you guys. I love it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
man.
that makes me very humble, because um, I find that the most amazing thing about, what we do nowadays, that I talk to people that live, on the other end of the world in a completely different time zone.
Yeah.
it's,
So,
it's
so
past midnight over here.
I
And
was gonna say, tell our listeners where you're at. Tell us, listen,
yeah,
where.
well, I'm in east of Holland, very close to the German border, very close to the city of Nijmegen, and it's I'm not sure, but I guess it's um, 30 minutes after midnight, I would say
After me.
something like that.
So,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but
That's the,
that
yeah.
impresses me the most. That especially with you guys, in the United States, you have so many great bands, and you have such a history on, especially on the heavy side of music,
Yeah,
with bands, and also that goes for England.
yeah.
When we toured England the first time, we played with a lot of bands, together, which were really great, and you can tell it's in their culture, it's
Yes.
in their bones, they live it, they feel it, and you're humbled by that. And if then somebody, gives you a compliment like that, like a bunch of, crazy Dutchmen, make some music, that speaks to people at the other end of the world. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And that's the thing is, you never know who's going to be listening, right? You never know who you're going to be able to reach with your music, right? And that's one of the things I like harping, not only just, with bands that I talk to, but just anybody who listens. Just play, man. You never know who would know that somebody like yourself on the other side of the world would bring back a lot of emotions and feels and from a Salvadorian guy in Southern California in the United States. You know what I mean? Like like who would have thought? Like in a million years,
Yeah,
So it's a blessing. It's
yeah.
something very amazing and beautiful because when you mentioned culture, I was like, yeah, like it's a universal language.
Most definitely,
Yeah,
most definitely.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that, that's always, if you look at, the world today, but also at the world, 20 or 30 years ago, there's a lot of stuff going on. And the funny thing is, as soon as you talk about music, and all of a sudden it's not that important anymore, where you have been born, or the way you have been raised, there's this international universal thing, in music, which is great, and people
Yeah.
should enjoy that a lot more than they probably do, I guess.
Exactly, exactly. And it kind of says kind of like a little bit what you were saying too about like how, the Europeans, you guys over on that side love us, but guess what? We love you guys too. Like, it's like you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
this culture coming together where like we look at our American bands, we're like, yeah, they're great, that's cool. But then when we hear, bands like At the Gates or anything like that, we're like, like we get so shocked, we get so amazed, like they're doing it
yeah,
over there, they're better.
yeah.
Yeah. And then
That's funny that you mentioned that, because,
yeah.
like, I have to think back, mid 80s, when I bought my records, vinyl records, and there was no internet, no nothing, you had
Hmm.
to wait for magazines, that maybe came out, twice or three times a year. And
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
all photocopied and stuff like that. And and I remember that, for instance, with the Iron Maiden albums, I knew all the liner notes, I knew everything, I knew
Hmm.
where it was recorded. I had no idea, where the Compass Studios on Nassau were, but
Yeah.
I tried to picture all that, and who
Hmm.
produced it and stuff. But that's the only thing that we had, and then you saw like the Live After Death album recorded in Long Beach Arena. You go like, oh, wow.
Like, oh, you guys get the festivals, you guys get that. I'm like, well, now it's switched. Now you guys got all the festivals and stuff now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's a different
yeah,
time, but we're still here. That's the
yeah.
important thing. Yeah.
absolutely.
That's the thing is we're still here, man. So kind of want to transition again, still with you guys, right? And I want to transition in what does the future hold? You got me excited. You got me, you have a longtime fan here. You got a lifer, you know, but what's coming up? Any new material, any covers? I would love to see, and that's the other thing about you. I'm like, I would love to hear, you know, a Diggeth version of something. You know what I mean? Anything in the woodwork that's coming
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Well, I mean, the studio, going back to the studio will be probably will be next year, I guess. It's a
Gotcha.
little bit difficult to say because we got a lot of touring coming up. The funny part is we come to the States early
Okay.
October.
Okay. You
Gonna
coming over
do a
here? You coming
couple.
to California? Are you coming?
Unfortunately, not to California,
Ah,
but
man.
we'll be in the Chicago, Milwaukee area,
Ah, gotcha,
and
gotcha.
hopefully, expand on that. Because
Okay.
I mean, United States is huge.
Yeah.
We're now doing quite well in that Chicago area, and we're also talking about releasing the albums, in Texas, which is way down south.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
it would be so cool, to do something with American bands over there, and do like a proper tour,
Of
instead
course.
just a couple of shows. But um, hopefully that will materialize in 24.
Hmm.
What's up, everybody? Want to jump in really quick to tell about one of my favorite brands and my brothers over at Heavy Defender Merch. Heavy Defender Merch products are a must-have for any heavy metal fan. Their banners, pins, and apparel is made from high-quality materials that feature bold, eye-catching designs that are truly to capture the essence of the metal lifestyle. The shirts are comfortable and durable as hell, man. The hoodies are perfect for when you're leaving the whiskey and it's fucking 2 o'clock in the morning, it's cold as shit. Heavy Defenders offers a great selection of products for any metalhead looking to represent their passion in freaking style. With unique designs and quality material, hey, check out HDM.
It's difficult to say, but things are looking a lot better now. The whole COVID thing seems behind us. Everything gets a little bit more stable.
Yeah. Yeah. We're fine. We're fine.
On
We're fine. It's just the flu. We're good.
Yeah, exactly. On the
Yeah.
other hand, if globally that there's so much things going on. We have to see how it all pans out. But
Hmm.
in Europe, we got a lot of shows coming up. We're completely booked until the end of the year.
Oh,
We're
wow.
gonna. I think our last show is on 23rd of December, just before for the holidays, for the Christmas holiday.
Hmm.
So we got to play a lot, and after that, we have to take some time off, to also make sure that you get right headspace again, for
Hmm.
writing music.
Of
I mean,
course.
I've got tons of guitar riffs, recorded on iPhone and stuff. Every time I had an idea, let's
Yeah.
record it before it's gone,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because the next day I know the notes, but I don't know nothing anymore about the groove or whatever. So it's always like, oh, I have an idea. I need something to record. Where's my phone? But
Yeah. Yeah.
so we have got all those little bits and pieces, from rehearsal, from sound checks. We've said like, record it before it's gone.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we
Hmm.
have to, then that whole process starts again, where you have to sift through all those pieces
And put them
and see what,
together. Yeah.
yeah, and see what
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
make of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I said, there's a beauty in having your own studio and working on song ideas. Uh, but it can also be a real pain because there sometimes you need some external people, that say like, stop,
Aha.
you
Yeah.
have enough,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
keep it more simple.
Yeah.
And we try with, well, that's maybe a little bit of plan for the next album to, be a little bit more tighter on stuff, and
Okay.
go like,
Okay.
okay, sometimes, go like, okay, this is good enough, and not go
Yeah.
too far with it. But that's always difficult. So yeah, hopefully I hope that we, go back to the studio early 24 and, work on new songs. And then you have to go through that whole process of recording.
Yeah.
And of course, vinyl production, which takes forever nowadays because
I could.
everybody wants to
Yeah.
put out vinyl.
Once a vinyl. Yeah. Yeah. Everyone wants a collectors. I'm. I think it's come. I mean, obviously, it's making a comeback and stuff, right?
Yeah,
It's here, but I think most importantly, hey, it kind of it fits the music, right? It fits with where it's going. It needs to be.
definitely.
We need to have the vinyl. We need to have the even if we do CDs. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
people still want CDs, believe it or not. And
yeah,
it's just where it's going. It's just where it's
yeah.
going.
Well, I like the whole ritual of
Ah,
putting on an album and putting that needle down,
ah,
and listening to his side A
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
listening to his side B and listening
mm-hmm.
to all the songs,
Yeah.
because I do the same thing when I'm on Spotify. I like that too. When I'm outside and the sun is shining, I got my little device, and I got my Spotify account.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I start doing the same thing that I see a lot of younger people do, skipping through songs, which I
Ah,
really think is a curse,
yeah.
And the good thing about vinyl and even CDs, but vinyl definitely was like you listened the whole album.
Of
And
course.
that also, you should give an album its time to sink in. And that's
Yes.
always something that puzzled me. When I saw the reviews of albums, then an album comes out and uh, there's already a review, and I go like, how the hell do you do that?
Yeah.
Because
You gotta.
I have to listen to an album and I have to listen to it again, and I have to look into the lyrics,
It's
and
gotta
it
marinate.
takes me always a while to get it. And
Yeah.
I like that. I love that process. I think
Mm,
that's part of it because
yes.
um, the people who made it put their time into it, and um, you know, and I think that's the good thing about listening to vinyl. You take your time listening, really listening to all the songs on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, you gotta let it marinate, is what I'm hearing. You gotta let it sit. Yeah, and
there you have it.
and that's how with you guys too. I was letting it marinate over the weekend, and I'm like, man, I'm ready to
Cool.
eat. I'm ready to eat this, man, because it's even when you like it at first hit, it still marinates, right? It still resonates with you. It still goes
Right.
with you. It still follows you because
Yeah.
I'm going to bed and I'm hearing your riff. I'm like, yes, man. Like, I'm like, this is heavy, man.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so that's what's so the beauty of it. And I'm glad that, Diggeth is we're gonna get some new material. If you ever come to California, you let me know. Doesn't matter what part of California. I know California's big. I'll call off work, dude. I don't care. I'll come see you guys.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
ready to.
that's one of the
Yeah,
things on the big bucket list, or one of the big dreams. Like
yeah,
coming to that state, particularly, and
yeah.
doing shows. But you never know what happens.
Exactly.
A lot is possible these days.
Of course, of course. Yeah. No, I think you guys would be well recepted here. I think,
Cool.
yeah, there's a lot of thrash, there's a lot of death, there's a lot of this stuff. But when they see these groove bands, right? The stoner, they're like, oh, everybody takes a second, takes a second. Whoa, look at these guys. Like, yeah, yeah, there it is, and these young cats that I've talked to them, interviewed them on the podcast. They got respect for it, man. They got the love for it, and that's important.
Cool.
I always tell people, even the younger kids, that I talk to, I'm like, you got to respect the classics. You got to love what came before.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I love it.
Yeah, but it's I can't mention it enough. How inspiring it is. That what you just mentioned earlier. They said like, okay, I go to bed and I've got your riff in my head.
Yeah.
That it's that's unbelievable. Sometimes you're so caught up with your own music. You're so upfront with everything, and you have to put it away for a while.
Hmm.
And then the record is out for a while, and somebody tells you that, oh, that song means a lot to me, or that riff, or you know that did something to me, or pulled me through a bad period, or anything like that.
Hmm.
And then that's the first time you start to realize, what a great thing this is, that you can
Yeah,
do it and people relate to it.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's phenomenal, man. Yeah, yeah. But
definitely.
I'm really looking forward to the future, man. For your guys' future. Again, if you guys come to California, you're more than welcome, man. you know, hey, hey, we were ready for you here, man. I'm ready for you guys, you know. So
I start packing already.
there you go. Bring your sunscreen, man.
Yeah.
Bring your sunscreen. We got, you know, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
we could use some sun because we had the most crazy summer over here. You know, we
Oh
had so
man,
much rain, and in other
yeah,
areas of Europe, you know, it was like unbelievable hot. You know,
yeah, yeah. No, over
it's
here
crazy.
right now it's 105 over here. I'm in the AC and stuff, but it's bring your shorts, bring everything.
Right
'Cause
on.
yeah,
Sounds good to me.
yeah, brother. But
We're
that's
done with the rain.
yeah. We'll switch. How about that? We'll do a switch. We'll do a switch.
Sounds good.
But big H, man, I gotta put a pin on it today, man. You know, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time. Thank you for, you know, staying up late. I know it's on the other side of the world, you know. Anything else that you want to promote? Anything? Where can they find you guys? T- let's do the plugs.
Yeah, I mean, you can find us on the social media, you know, on the Facebook. We got our website, diggeth.com. We're on Spotify, YouTube. So yeah, give it a listen, and hopefully you like it. Let us know if you like it. We always like it when people respond. We always give an answer, and you know, keep on digging, I would say, and hopefully see you somewhere live.
Absolutely. Do you guys have merch? I didn't get to see what's it.
Yes,
Do you guys? Oh,
of course.
I'll
Yeah.
pay the shipping. I don't care, man. Brother, yeah. All right, man. Big H, thank you so much, man. Let me go ahead.